Moving on. How about stocks? Now when I say stocks, now I mean stocks, mutual fund stocks, right? Fidelity and venture capital. What if you have stocks? What if you have mutual funds? There is a huge controversy here, and last year I gave a more detailed class, and this year I did some more research, and last year I gave the fatwa of Shaykh Qardawi. And as you all know, Shaykh Qardawi is perhaps the senior most cleric alive in our religion today. May Allah Azza wa Jal give him more barakah in his life. He has a fatwa, I will not repeat it now, I gave that last year. More research, and this year I did a little bit more research, and I am now giving you the fatwa from the World Fiqh Council. Right, which is what I just said, the mainstream if you like, or a greater authoritative body. So this is a slightly different fatwa than maybe those of you who attended my last year's class. That world body, that council has said, and this is a little bit confusing, so pay attention. When it comes to stocks and mutual funds, we look at what is the intention behind buying those stocks and mutual funds. What is your intention? Is your intention for long-term investment? You want to save it for a rainy day. It's your college fund for your kid, right? It's your retirement fund. You're just saving it for a rainy day. In this case, according to the OIC's fiqh body, zakat is given not on the value of the stock, but on the dividends that come. The profit that you get, then you will give zakat on that. Right? So suppose you had $100,000 invested. MashaAllah, tabarakallah, this is definitely not this year or the last 3 years, but let's say 10 years ago, MashaAllah, tabarakallah, the stock market went up. You got $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, right? 7, 8 years ago, you could have gotten 20,000, would have been even doable if you invested in the right stocks, right? So the zakat will be the 20,000 dividends times 2.5%. Okay? Not the 100,000 value of the stock. Why? Because according to the Fiqh Council, this stock is like a second house or a property that you're just keeping for some future date. You're not intending to sell it right now. Okay? Now, suppose you are, mashallah, tabarakallah, dynamic young man, you're a stockbroker, you want to take risks, you're buying and selling, you're monitoring every 2 minutes, 3 minutes if the stock goes up and down, right? You just want to buy this, sell that. Suppose you're into the stock market in that manner, right? In this case, the scholars have said, your stock is basically your business merchandise, like the car salesman, like the furniture store guy. You're buying and selling according to the value, according to the market price. So if your niyyah is short-term investment, right? You're an aggressive person in terms of stock market, not in terms of character, right? You're an aggressive buyer and seller. You're monitoring, you're going this and that. If it goes up 0.25%, khalas, you'll sell it. Buy another one, goes up another half. Alhamdulillah, you thank Allah, you move on. If you're that type of person, and by short term, you all know what short term is. I don't necessarily mean the same day, but basically a few weeks, a few months, you just want to buy and sell, buy and sell, buy and sell. Then in this case, the stocks take the verdict of business commodities. And what is the zakat on business commodities? The value of the entire commodity on the day that you give zakat. And therefore, in this case, if your stock is valued at $100,000, on 15th of Ramadan, you will pay zakat on 2.5% of $100,000. Because stock for you has now become just like the car salesman, just like the furniture salesman. Is that clear? Right? And so according to this fatwa, the fatwa I gave last year was Shaykh Qardawi, which he gave back in the 60s, and I don't know if he still even holds that fatwa. And I thought a lot about it. I spoke to many scholars in the last few days as well to make sure that I'm teaching you something that is mainstream. And it seems that those people who research more in this, Shaykh Qardawi rahimahullah, he gave the fatwa back in the 60s, and it was still a new thing. The OIC, the Islamic Conference, has given the fatwa only a few years ago after extensive research. And it really makes sense that you differentiate between long-term and short-term, right? Long-term investments, you will pay the zakat when you get the money from them. When you sell the land after 20 years, then you will pay the zakat on that money. Otherwise, if the land is just sitting there and you're not advertising it to be sold, then there is no zakat on the land, right? If you own a second house, let's say, whether it's empty, whether it's not, you don't pay zakat on the second house until you put the sign for sale. You guys following me, right? So based on this fatwa, long-term investments are not zakatable as long as you don't intend to sell them. When you sell them, then the money will become the zakatable income. Therefore, we now understand, those who attended last year will hear a different fatwa, 401ks, right? They will have the same ruling, that there is no zakat to be given on them until they are cashed out. Until you actually sell them and get the money. Okay? Now last year I gave the fatwa of Shaykh Qardawi, so don't get angry at me. This was Qardawi's fatwa, and inshallah Allah will reward you. Alhamdulillah, good. Okay, extra reward. But this year, after some research and whatnot, and talking to a lot of people back and forth, Allah knows best, but this fatwa makes sense to me now. That 401ks, because it is long term, because you're not cashing out, you want to take it when you're 60, 70, 80 years old, then you give zakat when you cash out on it. When you get it all back. That is when you will give zakat on it, when you actually have full possession. Otherwise, it will be considered to be a type of weak debt. It's not in your possession, you're just handing it over to a third party, and you don't actually have full ownership over it. It's partial ownership. It's not full ownership, and therefore there is no zakat on 401ks according to that fatwa. Who should zakat